On today's show, who are the top 5 offensive defensemen in the 2024 NHL Draft? We'll get into that on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi Kalakash, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, with Sebastian Hai, Director of European Scouting and Head Scout for Dobber Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down the top 5 offensive defensemen in the 2024 NHL Draft. We've also got 5 honorable mentions, which we'll start with. So the way we break this down is our first segment is the top 5, is the 5 honorable mentions plus pick number 5 on our rankings. The second segment will be picks number 4 and 3 on our rankings, and the final segment will be picks 2 and 1 in our rankings. So stick around to the end to find out who are the top 2 offensive defensemen available for the 2024 drafts. Before we get into any of that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Indeed knows that when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count, and that's why with Indeed you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. So visit Indeed.com/locked-on to start hiring now. Terms and conditions apply. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe as usual. Leave us a comment down below letting us know what you think of the episode, what you think of our rankings. If you have any questions, we're more than happy to answer them. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get things started right away here with our 5 honorable mentions. We can start at the bottom here with Henry Mews, a right-handed defenseman playing in the OHL. Talk me through his game. You've watched him a ton this season. He's a player you've been pushing for all year. He also played some decent hockey at the U18 World. So just talk me through his season overall, size, handedness, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so he's an average-sized right-shot defenseman, and he went just over a point a game with the Ottawa 67s this season. He's super mobile. He's a very good puck mover and passer from the blue line. The Ottawa system does not really encourage its defensemen to be overly active in the offensive zone. They're a bit more glued towards the blue line, but he was getting a ton of pucks to high-danger areas, and I think that he's a player that will take a significant leap in terms of valuation as a D+1, perhaps a bit similarly to a player like Hunter Bruce-Davis, who was obviously a decent part of that Elias Lindholm trade going to the Calgary Flames, and Henry Mews has a lot of those qualities. While there's definitely a bit of a lack of consistency and offensive dynamism, I think that the system has a significant role in that. And he is just such a good passer offensively. His shooting habits are really intelligent. He gets to the high slot and even the mid slot before firing off a shot. And he really values possession. He's really great on the cycle and making sure that possession is retained rather than lost cheaply. So those are all reasons that I think that he's a really solid offensive defenseman. But next up, we have a player from my side of the pond here with Leo Sahlin Wallenius. And he's a really toolsy and also very mobile offensive defenseman. So talk me through his game.
Yeah, Sahlin Wallenius is really interesting because in terms of offensive defensemen, he's got a lot of tools that other offensive defensemen usually develop later on. The delays, the anticipation in the offensive zone, the ability to walk the blue line and kind of fake shot his way to a shooting lane, I think is a really interesting aspect of his game. But there's some refining left to do. I think that the defensive concerns with Sahlin Wallenius are pretty big. The issue with Sahlin Wallenius is there's consistency in how poor his defensive game is. He does the same things over and over again, the same mistakes over and over again defensively. He's easy to push off pucks usually. He's not necessarily a body that, even though he's listed as pretty big. Just remind me of his size and handedness real quick.
He's listed at like 6'1" and 175 pounds, but he looks a bit heavier than that in my recent viewing. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's closer to 200 than to 175 when he's weighed at the combine.
For sure. There have been sequences this year where he gets out-muscled by smaller guys. It's really leverage, mechanics, I think, is the issue with him along the boards. And on top of that, his stick positioning isn't on par at all yet. But offensively, there's a lot to love in his game. He's a player who moves pucks quickly and accurately. He's got a big shot from the point. He's able to walk the blue line fairly well. He's one of the most mobile defensemen in this draft. The skating is really, really good. which is usual for Swedish defensemen. I mean, at this point, we've gotten used to it. Swedish defensemen, there's something about them, man. I don't think I've seen a single one who skates poorly in recent years. It's really impressive. But yeah, mobility, reach is really important as well when he's getting around opponents in the offensive zone. He's a decent breakout passer, so there's qualities there. I don't see a first rounder here, and I see a significant gap between him and the other top Swedish defenseman who's on this ranking and who plays on the same team as him. But let's move on to Aron Kiviharju, who's also really interesting. He's a player that I've followed pretty closely last year. He got injured in September, only came back for the U18 Worlds. So the U18 Worlds was the first time since September that we got a look at him. Just talk me through what we've seen from him this season, what the concerns are, but especially what the skills are with Kiviharju.
For sure. So he's an undersized left shot defenseman listed at 5'10", 172, but he looks significantly bigger than that. I do think that while he was out injured, that he spent a decent amount of time in the weight room to add a little bit of weight to his frame. And he was playing in Liga this season, only logged 7 games, but scored a goal and an assist in that time span. And he is an excellent passer. He's really intelligent on puck. He's mobile in all 4 directions, though his skating lacks a little bit of power and perhaps that acceleration. But he's a really fluid skater, and he's able to integrate that with his handling ability and his passing mechanics, but also habits to be really quite creative and capable as a quarterback in the offensive zone. I'd say he's perhaps a little bit more of a raw distributor than a raw playmaker at his core, but the playmaking game has certainly seen some very bright flashes in the past couple seasons, and the room to grow with him offensively is significant with the way he's able to process the game, the tools that he has, and just the passing is just so exceptional, which is at this point most clear in his breakout game as a high-end passer, but is certainly there in the offensive zone as well. And he played a decent enough U18 World Championship tournament, having been out injured for so long, and it was really between him, Emil Hemming, and Konsta Helenius in terms of creating offense, especially on the man advantage for that team Finland.
Yeah, for sure. And moving on, we've got Sam Dickinson as well as on this honorable mention list. And if you're wondering what Sam Dickinson, a player who's been touted as a defensive defenseman for the last year, is doing on this list, it's because he deserves to be. His offensive skill is really interesting. First and foremost, he's one of the best skaters in the draft. That goes without saying. His ability to carry pucks through transition is really aided by that. But for me, with Dickinson, what makes him so interesting is you've got a player who really has an interesting ability to kind of shoot through opponents. Like his shots just find the net through multiple lanes. That helps a lot in his offensive creation. He's also a decent passer. He put up 70 points in 68 games this season with the London Knights in the OHL from the second power play. So he's got that ability to create offensively, and I think he more than deserves to be on this honorable mention shortlist among offensive defensemen, because his offensive skill really stands out on top of being a really, really good defensive player. I think that Dickinson definitely deserved a shout here, both for his heavy shot, his accurate passing, his great breakout pass, and his constant ability to join rushes and to carry pucks out of his zone and into the offensive zone. He's really, offensively, he's capable. He's more than capable. Let's close things off with the honorable mentions here with our last guy. It's going to be Alfons Freij, who plays for the same team as Leo Sahlin Wallenius, which is Växjö in the J20 league. He's earned a move to the Allsvenskan just recently. So talk me through his game and why he's our honorable mention here.
Yeah, so he is a tremendous skater, probably the best mover in this entire draft, and in all 4 directions, super fluid. He's a really great passer, has some of those same raw tools that Aron Kiviharju has, but to a higher degree, a more consistent degree, and a lot more refinement behind the decision-making that supports those tools. He reads play very well. He plays with pace, especially on puck. Very, very effective in building up play in transition, whether he be a passer or a carrier. And in the offensive zone, he likes to activate up to the hash marks and get a ton of pucks to the slot. He's a very, very good slot passer, one of the better ones among blue liners in this draft class. So while he might be a bit more of a puck-moving defenseman than a playmaking defenseman or offensive defenseman in terms of what he does best, he certainly still deserves a mention on this list. But to wrap up this first segment, please Talk me through the game of Cole Hutson, our number 5 ranked offensive defenseman. So Hudson's a June 28th, 06 birthday, very young for the draft class, 5'10", 159 pounds, left shot defenseman, certainly undersized, but the offensive impact was significant, logging 15 goals, 36 assists for 51 games in just as many games with the NTDP, and just dominating the U18 World Championships with 4 goals and 13 points in 7 games to lead all draft-eligible players, not just defensemen, including the forwards as well. So talk me through his offensive game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that everything flows through processing for Hutson. He's a player who really thinks the game at a high-end level. He's able to kind of take in information really, really quickly. And he's one of the best players at gaining the offensive zone and then making the right pass, which I think is really key to his offensive production. He's a bit of a different player than his brother Lane Hutson. Lane is a lot more of a shifty, elusive, kind of deke the lights out type player. Hudson's a lot more meticulous and intricate in his ability to create offense, but doesn't have the explosiveness or the flash with the puck that Hutson does, that Lane Hutson does. I think that overall, if you can take Cole Hutson to a level where his skating improves, where his defensive awareness and engagement improves, you've got a really intelligent breakout passer, a really intelligent zone accessor who can just break lines, game the zone, set up a shooter with the puck on the zone entry, and just get points that way. That's how he's gotten a lot of his points this year with the NTDP at the U18 Worlds. It's what he does best. I think defensively there are way too many concerns. I think this is a player who the concerns with him are a lot more flagrant than with Lane Hutson. Lane Hutson was at least able to keep up with play mentally. He just couldn't physically because of his struggle with pivots, his struggle with his outside edges combined with his lack of size. Cole Hudson's about the same size that Lane Hutson is right now. I think Cole Hudson's probably going to grow 2, maybe even 3 inches by the time he finishes his NCAA career, which could help. But I think the awareness is a lot bigger of an issue with him. So, he really needs to get that up to par for sure. And defensive awareness is something that is really difficult to teach in a meaningful, projectable, and consistent way. But if you can get there, I think that you've got a top 4 defenseman in Cole Hutson. And again, the offensive creativity, the inventiveness, the awareness, the intelligence is all there. Defensively is a big concern. Skating-wise is a big concern, but he's able to create, and we saw that at the U18 Worlds. But that's our first segment done. We'll get into our second segment where we discuss picks 4 and 3. And there was a debate here between me and Sebastian regarding picks number 4 and 3 on our top 5 shortlist of offensive defensemen for the 2024 NHL Draft. We'll get into that in just a second. But before we get into that, a quick word from our sponsors over at Indeed. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed. And that's why that's the hiring platform you need to build your team. When you're hiring, Indeed is the best place to get that done. Indeed has a plethora of tools to help you find the best candidates for your job. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for the right candidates with the right skills, Indeed has a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all in one place. You can attract, hire, and interview all on the same website. With Instant Match, which is a streamlined tool that Indeed offers, Instant Match makes sure that over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job description the moment that they sponsor a job, according to Indeed data in the US. And Indeed is super easy to use. I used it as an employee looking for a job. I got my job through Indeed, and it was super easy, super simple, and really quick in order to find a job candidate, to find a job that matches what I need as a candidate. And even better, Indeed's the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have job requirements. It's an unbelievably powerful hiring platform, delivering 4 times more hires than any other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest in 2019. So start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked-on. This offer is only good for a limited time, so claim your $75 job credit right now at Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply, but if you need to hire, you need Indeed. Alrighty, so let's move on to our second segment here where we'll discuss picks 4 and 3. And like I said at the end of last segment, there was a big debate here for me between Sebastian and I regarding 4 and 3. But we've opted for Artyom Levshunov at number 4. There's a lot to love in Levshunov's game. But first, talk me through the profile here, the skating, size, handedness, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so Levshunov is a 6'2", 209-pound right shot defenseman who played for the Michigan State Spartans in the NCAA this season and was key to them winning their division. And he's an athletic freak, probably one of the hardest workers in this entire draft class, both on and off the ice. And just beyond that, he's an elite level skater. Some real creativity in his offensive zone sequences. Loves to activate up the boards, and I love his offensive impact. I was really making a push for him at third on this board, but did not quite win that debate this time around. But that said, you are still a really big fan of his offensive upside. So talk me through his offensive impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So Levshunov, a lot of his impact comes through his consistent ability to join rushes, his ability to skate pucks up the ice, kind of like Sam Dickinson creates. But on top of that, I think Levshunov has a better shot. It's more heavy, it's more accurate, and he uses it more frequently. The only thing is for me is the shots that he takes sometimes are just from weird positions, and that's what gave me a bit of hesitation. Especially compared to the guy we have at number 3. For me with Levshunov, I mean, I've seen him take shots where he's shooting in stride from literally the right boards, so on his offside, just kind of throwing pucks into the top corner of the net, and that works at the NCAA level. It's not going to work at the NHL level. Players are more heavy on lanes. They're harder on pucks. Goalies are more aware. They're constantly well positioned. They don't let those gaps in. As hard and as accurate as Levshunov's shot is, I don't know. I don't think that's working. I also think that in terms of playmaking, there are some improvements left. Sometimes he makes the wrong pass at the wrong time. So kind of the pass selection, accuracy, and overall decision making, I think needs some work. And he's a bit clunky in terms of his hands. Now, this is quite typical for a player this big and this good of a stride. There are going to be some shortcomings in terms of stick handling ability, but I've grown a bit more fond of his stick handling game, especially just these small 2-touch plays where he kind of sets up the puck in a specific area and kind of hooks it to a teammate for a shot, that kind of stuff. That I've kind of grown on, but for me, it's about play selection, decision making. Offensively, I still think that there's some work there, and it's not to say that the third player on our list has necessarily the best decision making, because that's also a concern with him. It's just there's more upside offensively with our number 3 guy, and let's get into it right away. It's Carter Yakemchuk, the right-handed defenseman playing for the Calgary Hitmen. I believe he's 6'2", 195 pounds or something like that. He's an athletic freak, just a monster of a player. On top of that, though, he's the most daring offensive defenseman in this draft.
Yes.
The things he tries, sometimes it's just like, what are you doing? But when it works, it's fantastic. The stick handling ability, I think, is the best among the defensemen in this draft. The ability to set up the puck quickly in his hip pocket, to make moves to the inside, to stick handle through opponents. I've seen him score wraparounds after kind of going end to end. Like, this is a player who has a lot of dare in his game. I think that's a separator for me between him and Levshunov, is that Levshunov does dare, but does it a bit less vigorously, I would say. He does attempt some things, but he attempts things that are risky rather than daring in isolation, if that makes sense. With Yakemchuk, you also have one of the best shots in the draft, a heavy, accurate slap shot. His one-timer is just a weapon. He scored 30 goals this season in WHL. It's not for no reason. Just absurd numbers from him. He does need to clean up his decision-making in all 3 zones, though. He is a player who takes a lot of bad penalties. He has 120 penalty minutes, I believe, this season. I don't think he fought more than twice this season. So that gives you an idea of the type of penalties he takes and the frequency of them. And defensively, there are definitely some concerns. But I think in terms of pure offensive upside, which this ranking is based on, Yakemchuk is a better offensive defenseman than Levshunov. Even though Levshunov, for me, is a top 2, top 3 defenseman in this class, probably going to be a top 10 pick, and I'm not sold on Yakemchuk being a top 10 pick. I still think that Yakemchuk offensively, I give him the lean there on that side. That wraps up our second segment. We'll get into our third, where we discuss the top 2 offensive defensemen in the 2024 NHL Draft. So stick around to know which are these top 2 prospects. Just before that, let's hear from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. Alrighty, so let's close things off here with our final segment, the top 2 offensive defensemen in the 2024 NHL Draft. And at Dobber Prospects, we actually have number 2 ranked above number 1, one slot above number 1 in our actual rankings for overall abilities and upside and all that. But still, our number 1 pick and our number 1 defenseman in the 2024 NHL Draft at Dobber Prospects is number 2 on the offensive defenseman list, and it is Zeev Buium, the left-handed defenseman out of the Denver University Pioneers in the NCAA. I mean, just clutch and composure, just personified in Zeev Buium, right?
Oh, 100%. He's a 6 foot, 183-pound left shot defenseman who, as you mentioned, is incredibly evasive and escapable, so composed under pressure, consistently making very good decisions in very difficult scenarios. And he was key to Denver winning the Frozen Four championship this season. He played his best hockey of the entire year in their biggest games in that tournament. And through 42 NCAA games this season, he logged 11 goals, 39 assists for 50 points. The production is unbelievably good. And it was also excellent at the World Junior Championship back in December and January, where he played in all 7 games for Team USA. And he logged 3 goals and 2 assists for 5 points. He was excellent, especially in the medal round for Team USA. So he's a player that has just really made his mark as a clear top 5 contender in what he's able to bring. And a lot of that value comes in the offensive zone because he is just so intelligent on the puck, so escapable in different situations. And especially when, for instance, in the offensive zone and possession is contentious, his teammates so consistently trust him of just shoveling the puck in his direction and trusting that the puck is going to get to a really good position, even if it's coming from a really, really contentious spot. Zeev Buium can save those types of possessions, extend the cycle, create, whether he's trying to go for a primary assist, activating up the half wall and passing towards the slot, or just building play incrementally, being that distributor from the top of the horseshoe. He's so diverse in the way he's able to create advantages in the offensive zone, and just such an intelligent and effective offensive defenseman, right?
Absolutely. There are 2 words I would use to describe his role on his team with Denver University: creator and stabilizer. This is a player who consistently creates for his team. He's always pushing the puck to the right areas. He's always kind of drawing in a player. His shiftiness and elusiveness, his lateral mobility from the blue line is absurd. He finds lanes like no one else, especially I feel especially when he has a player right in front of him, when he has an opposing forward right in his face, trying to stick check him and trying to get a turnover and a breakaway. You're not getting it. He's so good at creating those lanes, identifying positions where he can exploit opponents. But on top of that, what I mean by stabilizer is, like you said, any puck that comes haphazardly toward his way, he'll corral it so easily and just calmly play it to the right spot to a player who's open. And just he stabilizes very unstable situations, both in the offensive zone, in the neutral zone, and in the defensive zone. And that makes him so special for me. And that's why we have him as our top defenseman in the 2024 class. Even though he's undersized, even though he's not necessarily the most athletic player, even though the top speed and agility could use some work, I still think that Zeev Buium's intelligence, awareness, composure, his ability to consistently stabilize plays, consistent ability to create offensively, there's a lot to love here. But in terms of pure offensive upside, no one in this draft compares to number 1 on our list here. And it is Zayne Parekh, the right-handed defenseman out of the Saginaw Spirit. He's another average-sized defenseman at about 6 foot, 185 pounds. But oh my goodness, is this player. Again, another just very calm and composed defenseman. But he uses that calm and composure not to stabilize play, but to be the catalyst to every offensive chance. And he's another player. He's another defenseman who scored a bunch of goals this season, right? So talk me through the game with him real quick. Let me know what you've liked from him this season, because there's a lot to love here, especially offensively from Parekh, right?
Oh my God, yeah. He scored 33 goals and 63 assists for 96 points in 66 OHL games, leading all draft-eligible talents in the OHL in both goals and points. That is absurd. Actually, no, sorry. He was 3 goals behind Liam Greenstreet. Sorry. He almost led all OHLers in goals, though, as a defenseman. Oh, no. But the offensive impact was superb. He was key for Saginaw in creating offense, whether it be at even strength or on the man advantage. He's so shifty, he's so evasive, an elite-level puck handler, elite-level playmaker, and has a wicked shot to boot. So, yeah, he's average-sized, as you mentioned, but he's a right shot, which is immediately a plus-level thing for NHL organizations. And while the defensive work is far from refined at this stage in his career, and he can be physically overwhelmed, and he goes to a bit for like the bear hug approach to containing players physically. There's a lot to still refine in his game. I think it just gives him that runway. At the time being, he projects as like a pure offensive defenseman in the NHL that will likely rely on a stabilizing partner to really ground him at even strength if he's playing top 4 minutes. But there is a lot of growing room there because he reads the game so well, because he is so composed under pressure. And I think that you're never going to get a shutdown defenseman out of this player, but you might get a player who will be able to tread water at the end of the day, despite making like relatively consistent, very strange decisions and reads defensively. Like there are occasionally plays that make you want to rip your hair out a little bit in the defensive zone, and there are also moments where he tries to compensate for his lack of physicality with a really dirty or kind of like nitty gritty play, whether it be like behind the play and try to like elbow a guy or whatever. But he tries to get implicated on the physical side. It just isn't the cleanest at this stage in time, but the desire to do so is there. But it's the offensive talent, and that's the reason that we have had him in the top 10 all season long, because he is just so dynamic and so creative.
Absolutely. I think that the main thing with Parekh is, like you said, the offensive upside. For me, I don't think there's another defenseman in this class that has in terms of pure points, I don't think there's another defenseman who has a point per game upside, and Parekh does. Like, a lot needs to go right. He needs to improve defensively as well so that he gets more puck touches in better areas. And I want to see him cut less corners. That's the main thing. Is, like you mentioned, the bear hugging, the kind of going for the dirty hit instead of kind of doing the hard thing and going in there with the stick and all that. Those are kind of corner cutting scenarios where he's trying to kind of make his job easier so that he gets out of his zone, quicker, and sets up offensively better. But that also leads to a lot more chances against than it should. But like I said, with Parekh, it's just the shot's insane, the handling is insane, the passing is ridiculous. He's got top power play quarterback written all over him, and I think that it's just a matter of time before he improves the things that he does need to. And obviously there's some concerns when people hear that profile of player of like, oh, we had Ryan Merkley kind of in the same mold. We've seen, other offensive defensemen not work out because they don't put in as much work defensively and yada, yada, yada. I don't think that Parekh's defensive game is that bad. His awareness actually is pretty good. His stick work, when he does get involved with the stick, is pretty good. It's just he needs to stop cutting corners. He needs to do the hard thing rather than the easy thing. But as soon as that's learned, I think that you've got at least an average defensive player in Parekh with offensive upside up the wazoo. Like, he's got a ton of offensive upside there. So that's why he's our number one guy. That wraps things up for today's show. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you think about the episode, what you thought about our rankings, and who you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day and leave us a rating review. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And make sure to tune in for our next show as we continue our prospect coverage for the month of May. This has been Patty Kalikesh with Sebastian High, and we hope you tune in next time.